Hello, everyone. Just want to make sure my audio is good. Make sure everybody in the chat can hear me. Let me just say a few hellos out here. All right. Let me know if you can hear me, guys. Today, I wanted to do a quick stream about Forza as far as the recent updates. It looks like there was some, I guess, negativity as far as the things that are not going to be featured in the game, but for the most part, when it comes to some of those features, things like split screen and let me just check. Yeah, things like split screen and things like spectate mode, as well as adding AI to the multiplayer races. It's understandably, there are some people that still use those features, but when it comes to split screen, if anyone's played it recently or more recently on like Forza Motorsport 7 or even Forza Motorsport 6, with them doing a horizontal split, it tends to leave kind of like a narrow depth of field as far as for your driving. It's great as far as for your left and right visibility, which works well when you're racing against somebody that's going to be right alongside you and things like that. But as far as positioning the car for like turns that are coming up, it makes it a little bit harder to judge some of the braking zones and things like that. So I can understand some people wanting to use that feature, but when I used it, it wasn't to its optimal use, or it wasn't that great of an experience when it came to like racing my sons in split screen. Now, as far as when it came to racing online and multiplayer, it definitely seemed to work better as far as when they're on their own Xbox or if they're on their PC and we're in like a private lobby kind of thing. But then the drawback is only having it where it's just the three of us racing on track and no other cars, and not wanting to race with random people that might or might not run you off the track. It would have been nice to have something like the AI filling the field. Now, Motorsport 7 didn't have it. I don't even think Motorsport 6 had it. It's like a feature that was as far back as like Motorsport between 2 and 4 that feature was present. But as far as split screen, it's kind of been there most of the iterations of Forza, at least since 5. But as far as like the AI to field or adding them to the field, it hasn't been in the past couple of iterations. So it's something that they probably should have avoided talking about, considering it wasn't in the previous title. But those are features that I can understand some people being upset. Like me, I would prefer to have AI fill the field in like a private lobby type of thing. Spectate, for me, it didn't really make that much of a difference. It would be a cool feature to have, but I know it's more so not really a detriment, but it would be like a roadblock for those that are into like esports, or if you're doing like a league where you want to broadcast it, and instead of having the race just from the view of one driver, you can have almost like a broadcast view. So spectate is something that I hope they're able to implement, and I'm hearing whispers in the background as far as that they are working towards something where those that want to spectate will not take a place or a spot for one of the drivers. So it's something that they'll probably add down the road. It's just unfortunate that they won't have it at launch, but considering they're not really gearing as much towards esports, and we kind of got to get used to the new safety and point system, it kind of makes sense that they'll work that in with future updates and things along those lines. But that's not the main reason why I wanted to do this broadcast. I wanted to do this broadcast primarily because of the tracks that are being released with the launch of Forza Motorsport. Now, in previous titles, they've incrementally added more tracks as they've gone. Like I believe the first Forza Motor, well, not the first, but the first one for me was Motorsport 5, and that one had 17 tracks at launch. And with those 17 tracks, pretty much out of those, 3 of them were fictional tracks. Not the biggest a deal. So you had 14 real tracks, real world tracks that you may be familiar with, or at least 13 real world tracks you're familiar with, and then the Top Gear test track, which I still consider like a real track because it was a real testing zone that they used with the some of the shows or episodes and things like that, and as well as having the Stig, put cars to the test as far as on that particular track. But that one started off with a fairly small list of tracks. But when it came time for Motorsport 6, they had jumped up to 28 tracks with it and only added one additional fantasy track to that. So essentially, you had 24 real world tracks and then 4 fantasy tracks to go along with that. Now, I had hoped that this launch would start off with more tracks than what they're counting now. Like right now, they have about 15 that they've officially unveiled, 2 that are kind of rumored based on some of the pictures. There's like a track in France that may have been pictured, and the Nürburgring, at least the GP circuit, looks like it may have been pictured in some of the promotional material that they've shown, but they haven't officially announced those just yet. But there are 15 that they have announced out of the 20 that they're going to have at launch. And right now, out of those, it appears that there's 3 fictional tracks in that. Now, they're carrying over Maple Valley, and it looks like they've revamped it a bit as far as the scenery and all of those, some of the environment stuff for that track. But when it came to the other 2 tracks, they're new to Forza completely. One is a basic oval, although I would have preferred they had something like Richmond Raceway, which, if you're a NASCAR fan, it's kind of like a D-shape oval. I mean, even Dover would have been a nice one with the higher banks for the turns, or even better yet, the Bull Ring with Bristol with the high banks and higher speeds that you can maintain throughout. But overall, I think they're going to have a few of their fantasy tracks, and with this one being kind of new to Forza, it'll be interesting to see how the turns work out, as far as if it's just going to be more of a flat turn, a little bit of a banking where you can carry more speed out of the corner and things along those lines. Another fantasy track that they have, it looks like it was Green Oak. Let me just make sure here. Sorry about this not being as prepared, but Eaglerock is the name of the oval. Grand Oak is the new to Forza Raceway, where to me, it kind of reminds me of if you took Laguna Seca, or at least part of it, cut it in half, and then, mirrored it and then flipped it on its side kind of thing. It has some elevation changes and some turns, not quite a corkscrew or anything like that, but some of the tighter turns remind me a little bit of what you'll find on Laguna Seca and stuff like that. So it looks like it'll be an interesting track, although honestly, I would have preferred them have a real track in place of that, but licensing and whatnot, we'll see how it goes. But as far as the tracks that they've announced, like official tracks that are real world tracks, you have Barcelona, which has been in the series or in Forza games at least since 5 that I can recall. It's a nice technical track, a lot of longer a couple of long straightaways, but a lot of swooping or wide swooping turns that lead to passing or can give you more momentum going down that straightaway leading up to the next corner and stuff. So it's a nice track. If my stream lasts long enough, some of the video that you see playing in the background will probably show a couple of clips there as well. Another track that's been officially announced is Le Mans. Basically the 24-hour track, one of the tracks that they race for 24 hours. Now, the cool thing about this, and I know there are people upset about drag racing not being at launch and things like drifting not being at launch. Le Mans has a very long straightaway. It typically has 2 configurations, one with the chicanes and one without. If you were to go into like an open lobby or a private match or something like that, and you want to get your fix for drag racing to some extent, or at least have your hypercars be able to go up to the speed limiter, that's a track on that back straightaway where you can definitely do that. So until they bring drag racing officially to Forza, I mean, you'll have drag racing. To my understanding, you'll still have the drag racing or drag radials in there as far as tire selection, and you'll be able to set up your car like you could in previous Forzas, where you can either not completely remove the sway bar for front, or just at least lighten it, change the camber a good bit so it's more straight up and down, or even maybe some positive camber where it kind of bows out at the top. And then put it where it's a little bit stiffer spring for the rear, although it'll allow the weight transfer for when you go down the track. So you can do all those setups and just kind of test them out over at Le Mans on that back straightaway to see how it handles overall. But that's going to be a good track to do that, as well as if you're into like prototype, like the GT prototypes or GT3 and GT4 class cars. That's going to be a good track to test those out as well. Another track that they have is going to be Spa, which is the legendary track that pretty much only has its one configuration. I know that there was the older one that went through the town and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem like anyone has the licensing to like recreate that. And I think maybe Grand Prix Legends way back in the day, there may have been a mod for it, but haven't seen anything more recent. But the standard Spa layout is pretty cool as far as high speeds, tight turns, very tricky areas to pass. Passing is available in a lot of straightaways and some of the turns, but you definitely have to time it right and make sure the person doesn't try to run you wide as far as on the skirts of the track and stuff like that. Another new track that they have, or another official track, like some of the fantasy tracks, like I mentioned earlier, is Eaglerock, the Oval, Grand Oak, kind of like a swooping track, some tight turns, elevation changes. And then they have Maple Valley, which is another, fictional track that they've brought back from Motorsport 6 and 7. I like what I see as far as the scenery, but once again, I prefer the real tracks. They just have that more immersive feel as far as the grandstands, the fencing, and things like that, but still a cool track nonetheless. Another one that they have is Hakone Circuit, which is new to Forza at this point. Wasn't in 6 or 7 or any of the previous ones, so it'd be nice to see how this one is presented in the new motorsport. They have the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which I'm pretty sure they're going to have both the traditional oval for Indy as well as the road course, kind of like what you saw in NASCAR this past weekend, or even what you've seen way back when they had F1 there. I'm not as much of a fan of how the road course is set up, but it is still pretty cool as far as the technical turns, some nice straightaways, and then you have where it takes you out to the banking on the oval. But I'm more about the oval for that particular track. But it's great that they have Indianapolis already confirmed. Kyalami, which is the track in South Africa, it's new to Forza as well, and they've showed it in some of the material in some of the Forza monthlies where it goes through a lot of the nice corners as well as the elevation changes and just the scenery with it being a little bit different, where you may see more like clay or brown or red tones and things like that for some of the scenery around the skirts of the track. But overall, it's a beautiful looking track from what they've shown so far. Another track that's going to be on the confirmed list, which I'm so glad they included it, is Laguna Seca. I think it's currently known as WeatherTech Raceway. It used to be listed as Mazda Raceway on previous Forza Motorsports, primarily because Mazda had the sponsorship at the time. But now WeatherTech is the ones that have the sponsorship for that. The next track that they have already confirmed is Mid Ohio, which it's a good technical track. But as far as would there be other tracks I'd prefer to have confirmed over it? Sure. It's not a bad track. It is a narrower and smaller width track as far as overall when it comes to tight turns. A little bit harder to pass, but there are some straightaways where you can get a good run or hopefully outbreak the your opponents before you get into the next corners. Let me see. When it comes to the next one, we have Road America, another awesome track. I think IMSA had their WeatherTech series race there not too long ago, like within the past 2 weekends. I'm more of a fan of this track when they have like the MX5, Cup there, only because it has some fast straightaways, which is great if you're running like the GT cars and things like that. But just the width of the track and the fact that there aren't too many tight turns makes it easier for like the slower cars to be able to keep on getting momentum, or as long as you don't mess up coming out of a corner, you can get pretty good momentum and use drafting on the incline straightaway, going to the start finish line. It's basically like an uphill drive and stuff like that, which can make for an interesting finish. Where if they are able to slingshot by you, that will probably ruin your day. But it's enough room to block or enough room to team up and do like tandem drafting and things like that. Another cool track that they have, a little bit older track, but it's one that you'll see a lot of times for the rivals events, is Silverstone, and they have that as an official announced one as well. Another one that's returning from Motorsport 6 and 7, or at least I believe maybe just 7, is Suzuka, which Suzuka is, um, I would say, the probably the more famously known Japanese track. There's a few other tracks in Japan that are gaining in popularity, but more so those are smaller distance tracks. This one is more of like a high speed, and they have a couple of layouts, but there's a lot of long straightaways and some nice technical turns in this one. And with that particular track, it's great for whether you're racing, muscle cars or tuner cars, or just race cars, or even I'm not as big of a fan of taking F1 cars there, but you can definitely run F1 cars and have plenty of space as far as the turns, and not feel like you're going to be pretty much hitting the curbs all the way around. And then the last of the confirmed is Virginia International Raceway, or better known as VIR. Good, kind of like a good grassroots racetrack that also IMSA uses still. I don't think NASCAR uses that one, but for the most part, it's a good road course, although it's a bit on the narrow side, and you have to be careful on some of the elevation changes on some of the turns. Otherwise, you'll wind up, if you take it too wide, you'll wind up in the grass. So it's one you have to kind of be on your P's and Q's when setting up to pass someone, or hopefully out braking them, but making sure you don't miss that corner and wind up in the grass or the kitty litter. But the big thing that I want to talk about is, with those tracks mentioned, that was like about 15 of them there. There's only 5 more spots. Now, like I said, they haven't officially confirmed the Nürburgring yet, and they haven't officially confirmed one of the tracks in France. It's kind of similar to Circuit of the Americas out in Texas. I'm hoping we at least get Nürburgring confirmed here soon. Bathurst, or better known as Mount Paramount, I believe, or Mount Panorama. I know it mainly as Bathurst. It's the track out in Australia. I'm hoping, just because of the history of that track and how it can be frustrating and fun at the same time with a lot of those tight turns, where you're either bouncing off of walls or you hit those turns perfect, or you have to worry about sometimes some of the last few turns where there's like a bit of a kink. If you mess up, or if your opponent runs you wide on the turn, you wind up in the kitty litter at the end of the turn. But I'm hoping we get word that Bathurst is one of the included tracks. Another one that I would really like to see them confirm, although it may sound like I'm biased as far as stateside tracks or tracks in the US, I do want to see Road Atlanta. Out of a lot of the IMSA tracks, I'm more partial to Road Atlanta over Road America, or even Virginia, or VIR. It's a combination of good speed, um, a lot of S turns, but they're not as, you don't have to slow as much. Like, you can kind of straighten them out so you can maintain your speed into those S's. So there's a lot of fun where you can either set up somebody to pass in those S's, or you can, kind of stay with them in the turn without making contact. And then on that straightaway at the end of the S's, you can pretty much do a drag race to one of the sharper corners at the end of the track. So it's one of my more favorite tracks to run on. Another one that's in the US that I would really like to see, that has a lot of history, is Sebring. Sebring is, while it may seem boring as far as being a flat track, I mean, it is flat, no elevation changes whatsoever. But think of it as like if you could write or draw your own racetrack lines at an airport. It definitely has a lot of character to it as far as the first sweeping corner. Although with the AI changes, I'm hoping they drive the actual lines that what you see in races, as opposed to previous track limits kind of kept it where they would kind of short that turn a bit and make for almost like a pile up coming down that straightaway afterwards. But yeah, for the most part, Sebring is a great track that has a lot of history to it. IMSA races there. I believe IndyCar still races there. It's one that I feel should, especially considering it was in, I believe, 5, 6, and 7, or at least 6 and 7. It's one that should definitely carry over to the new motorsport. Um, Another track, and I'm not sure if I made mention of this one already, is Daytona. Now with them having the time of day or the daily progression and things like that, having a track like Daytona, not just for the oval. I mean, yes, I'm a NASCAR fan, but their road course, whether you watch the Rolex 24 or not, or if you watch like the MX5 Cup running there, or the Porsche like Drivers Cup and things like that racing there, it's fun watching the weather change or the time of day change. Um, on that road course and stuff, and that's what really makes it a very interesting track overall. I'm sorry about the gravel sounds in the background. Cat's deciding to do something now. But anyway, Daytona is definitely a track I would like to see at launch, primarily because of the history of Daytona, the time of day progression, where you will actually be able to see that and use that in the game. In considering with how that new feature is going to look awesome as you watch the sun go down behind the clouds and things like that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we see that. There's a whole litany of tracks that I would really like to see, like Brands Hatch is another one. They have a couple of different layouts for it, but pretty much that's great for like the smaller cars. So if you want to do like a mini racing cup or mini clubman's racing series, or like the Peugeot racing series, or like the Clio Cup series, that's a perfect track for that. And it works well for even if you're doing IndyCar, which I'm pretty sure they're going to have a variety of open wheel cars in this newest motorsport, or even if you're doing, supercars or just regular touring cars. The elevation changes and turns and basically the passing zones make for a very interesting race. One that you have to kind of watch your back going into corners so that they don't outbreak you and things like that. But definitely a good track that I hope makes it in by launch. I can kind of see the Top Gear track, because I'm pretty sure the licensing at this point has long gone where that's not going to be a thing to have. Um, but I would like to see Monza or Mugello in this upcoming Forza Motorsport. Monza mainly because whether you do the chicane at the end of the straightaway or not, it's a good high speed track, easy turns, good side by side racing is pretty easy on that. And overall, it's a great track for open wheel racing, touring cars, as well as GT cars and things like that. Um, and besides that, I would say there's a whole list of tracks that I would like to see them carry over, like COTA, which is Circuit of the Americas from Texas. I would really love to see that one in there as far as the next motorsport. But I can wait if they do it as like an update, considering that this is going to be kind of a games as a service. So we'll see continuous updates both for cars as well as tracks and possibly more modes over time. So I'll be patient on those. But Daytona, Nürburgring, Brands Hatch, Bathurst, those are like some of the must-haves, just because history as well as the fun of those tracks. And then one that almost slipped my mind here, or actually two, good road courses that are still on like NASCAR circuit as well as for IMSA, is Watkins Glen as well as Sonoma. I'm more partial to Watkins Glen just because of the traditional shorter track version for NASCAR. But even the full track version for Watkins Glen is a ton of fun. Whether you're doing spec cars like the Miatas or the MX-5 Cup cars, whether you're doing like the Porsche Club or Porsche owner club race type of cars and things like that. It's one of the easier tracks to learn as far as for brake zones, balancing, and being able to time your braking so that way you can either outbrake or at least try to set it up so you can wind up on the inside turn coming out of the bus stop and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good things about that track. And then Sonoma, the elevation change. I know I say elevation change a lot, but it's the thing that makes it a little bit more interesting because sometimes it'll be a bit of a bog on certain car setups as far as you may not get the acceleration that you expect. So having it where you can tune the car to make sure you, if you're in a lower gear, you can pull going up that hill and then let it coast as you're kind of going through the S's and still at full throttle, but now you can, put it in third, fourth, or fifth to kind of, pull away from the your competition and stuff. But Sonoma's a great track. Hope that it eventually makes it in if it doesn't make the cut for launch. But man, I've probably rambled here enough as far as all these tracks. As you can tell, I'm still excited for this game. October 10th can't come here soon enough, but I'll try to do more content on different things that we find out about Forza between now and then. But today was just basically going over the list of tracks and then just touching base on some of the features that are missing at launch, which the last batch of them, I would say it's not worth the delay at this point in time. I know that will probably upset some that are really looking forward to some of those features, but I think it, with the exception of probably split screen, I think they can work the other ones in over time without it being as much of a detriment. And I know that there are some that are still upset as far as the drag racing and the drifting. Drag racing, I hope when they do add this, it's not just like what we have currently with the tires. They're able to go ahead and allow us to do tubbing for the body. So the rear wheel wells, you can tub those in and put like 15-inch, well, not 15-inch, but like the wider series tires for the back, like what you would see on some of the, not necessarily the funny cars, but like some of the pro stock and things like that you see at like the, Saturday night drag strip and stuff like that. But looking forward to this game. If you guys have any questions or comments or feedback that you'd like to leave in the comment section, please do so for like future videos. But thank you for everybody watching. I know this was kind of impromptu. Sorry I haven't asked or answered any questions. Let's see. Oh yeah, about I agree. It would be nice if we do get a mountain track, kind of like for when they do add drifting. But I'm hoping they don't just stop at drifting and drag racing. I'm hoping this is one of the times that they do something like a Pikes Peak. Like I would really like to see Time Attack make its way into Forza as far as whether it's like a point-to-point type of clock-based or timed trial, or things like the actual Pikes Peak race where pretty much no guardrails. You're flying up that hill as fast as you can, and you have to have as much downforce as you can and pay attention to the edges of the road course and stuff. But thanks again for joining me for this, and greatly appreciate all your support. If you have, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for upcoming content. I'll be trying to put more of these out at least once a week. I know it's been more like once a month or once every other month, but there'll be more of these between now and October 10th going over some of the features. And want to thank everybody for dropping by. Greatly appreciate it. Have a good one.